Birdland Tonight is your place for Orioles post-game coverage for fans by fans. All of the hosts on Birdland Tonight are Oriole fans that are either writing blogs or doing podcasts. Thanks for joining us. We will get started in just 1 minute. Make sure that you have subscribed to us on your favorite social media. Look up Birdland Sports on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Like, follow, retweet, share. See you in a moment. Welcome to Birdland Tonight. Hope you enjoyed today's Oriole game. No game today, but we figured it's a off day. The Orioles have been exciting for 31 days, and yesterday was a pretty special day, so we'd kind of hop in here and do a little bonus episode for your Thursday evening. Joining me today is Cody from I Just Like the Duck.
How you guys doing?
There you go. Use the mic. There's a podcast version, too, that can't see your hands wave around. And Jimmy from Bleacher Birds.
Cody just showed me up. I usually do my little finger salute.
All right. And then Andrew from Utah Street Report.
I'm back for more, Josh. We had so much fun yesterday. I had to come back on today and talk some more about what's going on in the world of Orioles baseball.
Yeah, Andrew, it was very I was very happy that we ended up being on the schedule for Birdland Tonight for such a magical game that we got to kind of discuss the immediate reactions and how that was. But I don't know about you guys, but I found that all day today I was just thinking back about John Means and about that game yesterday. Cody, how did you experience the game yesterday?
Yeah, so I experienced it on a bit of a delay. So, the game kicked off during work. So I waited until I got home. I went to the gym and started the game. And then it was, paused it, came home, had dinner, and then, sitting on the couch with the wife, trying to explain how special and unique this was, that it doesn't really happen all that often. And then, of course, my phone is blowing up, all of these notifications. So I'm ignoring the phone because I know that I don't want to look at, good or bad, what everybody was talking about. But it was incredible. I've never seen, I've tuned into a few perfect games at the end, but I've never watched something from strike one to 27 plus. The final out. That was incredible to watch. It was a really fun experience.
Jimmy, how about you?
So this was just awesome timing. So I actually was off work yesterday. I was one person that was off work yesterday. So I got to see the game from beginning to end, sitting down on the couch, watching the whole thing. it got to about the I think it was the 6th inning, and just randomly I just checked on the app while I was watching the game on TV, and I was like, why does it say perfect game? It's not a perfect game. And it in fact wasn't, because by that time Severino had already dropped the ball, but the MLB app still said perfect game. Um, but then all of a sudden I realized that there were no hits, there were no runs, there were no errors. It was in fact a no hitter at least, and I was psyched throughout the entire game. I tune into John Means games specifically because John Means is a solid bet for 5.5 strikeouts every single game that he's pitched this season. So I tune in and kind of eye that up every single time that he pitches, and it was a great game to watch. And it was nice that they had the A team on the broadcast too.
All right. We'll get to the broadcast later because we do have Jeff Arnold's going to join us to tell us about kind of his experience calling the game yesterday, which is going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you tune in for later in the show when we get Jeff on. I mentioned yesterday on the show that my brother and dad and I, we text each other all the time. And the text for yesterday's game, normally it's like words and what's going on in the game and frustrations. But yesterday's thread started with a pair of eyeballs being sent from Matt. And then me sending an emoji back about an inning later. And then just at the end of the game, a wow from my dad. And that was it. Because my family, when it comes to sports, is very superstitious. And normally that leans on the Ravens side because they're winning and in these tight games. But it creeps over into the baseball world as well sometimes. Andrew, are you superstitious while this is going on?
Not even a little bit. It's funny. You mentioned the eyeballs text that you got. I listened to an interview that our I'll just say our friend of the show, Glenn Clark, on Glenn Clark Radio, did an interview earlier today with Caroline Means.
Glenn Clark.
Right, I know. I'm going to go there. But Caroline Means, John's wife, got the same exact text, the eyeball emoji.
Yeah.
And because she was not watching from the get-go of her husband watching her husband pitching during yesterday's game either. She kind of had to be clued in that something special was happening, which I thought was funny. It made me think of the story that you told yesterday. But no, I'm not superstitious whatsoever. It's funny. I had actually, my wife was at work yesterday, and I had texted her to say, hey, the Orioles have a no-hitter going into, I think I texted her before the 8th or 9th inning in case she wanted to tune in on her phone or listen on her phone while at work. And she informed me today that she was able to eventually pull it up, but at first she had trouble remembering the login and the password for our account. And she didn't want to text me that, to ask me about it because she was afraid that if she did, she would think that I was going to think there was some superstition being broken. So there is always a lot of that around no hitters, obviously, right, in perfect games. But it doesn't bother me whatsoever. I'll say no hitter during a no hitter. All of that stuff. None of it bothers me.
If Matt texted me and asked me the password to my MLB account, and then right after I give it to him, the no hitter falls apart, it's 100% Matt's fault.
Yeah, and you probably murder him at that point. So
right, but part of it was neat watching that even John Means didn't seem sucked into the superstitions, where he was still talking to people on the bench and high-fiving people. Cody, did you get sucked into any of that? You're muted.
I'm having a heck of a day today. Just because it's so dramatic when you think back to some of the movies that have kind of done with perfect games or no hitters, and that's kind of the or even in the past you've seen guys that everybody's at the total opposite side of the field or the bench. Nobody in the dugout is near the pitcher. He's there kind of in the zone. But that wasn't the scene in Seattle. That didn't seem to be, John Means's mood. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the movie, the Kevin Costner movie, where he throws a perfect game for the love of the game.
Okay, sure. It's top baseball movie out there.
It's a fun movie, at least from the baseball perspective. And I kept calling back to it because there's a scene where every time he's getting ready to pitch, he has this little phrase he goes through in his mind: clear the mechanism. And I just wondered, at what point in time did John Means get up there and feel like okay, it's happening. I'm in the moment. You couldn't see it, but surely there was a time, be it the 8th inning or the 9th inning, when he started to feel it and realize it.
Yeah, I don't remember who pitched the no hitter earlier this season, and in between every inning through like the first 3 innings, he was chugging a water bottle while on the bench, and then he continued, and then he realized, oh, I need to keep doing this because it's working. And then all of a sudden he realized he's out there in the 9th inning. He's drank 9 bottles of water by then. He needs to go to the bathroom, but he can't go to the bathroom because that'll screw up the whole thing. So, and that was a major league pitcher just earlier this month. Jimmy, you've clearly got sucked into all this superstition, right?
Oh, absolutely. So we don't say no hitter. As a matter of fact, say when I saw that Seattle around the 8th or 9th inning said we're not superstitious, but no hitter, no hitter, no hitter, no hitter on Twitter yesterday. And then they went ahead and, of course, retweeted that and said, well, it didn't work. Good job, John Means, or something of that sort. But I am incredibly superstitious about this. You don't say the words no hitter. You don't mention perfect game for sure. Honestly, it's a rarity, but I was staying off of Twitter. And I was just trying to stay off of social media, stay away from anything that could have been a curse for it. My mother is a huge baseball fan, and she's the one that got me sucked into baseball and sucked into the Orioles. And I was dying to text her or to call her, but I knew better, and I couldn't do it until the last out was made. And as a matter of fact, when I called her, she was on a delay, so she wouldn't pick up the phone until she saw the last out herself. So my father texted me after they sent me the voicemail and said, okay, now you can call. So we are a very superstitious bunch.
Yeah, I get it. That's how you were raised. That's how we were raised. Early on in Section 336, Matt and I made a video about how it was our fault the 4 years before the Ravens made it to the Super Bowl because we screwed up during the playoffs. Where does this game rank in like the great Oriole games that we've seen? This was the first no-hitter. All right, 91, there was the team no-hitter. But since 1969, Jim Palmer, all of us are young enough that we were not alive then. Many current Oriole fans were not alive in 1991. So,
Yeah.
Which is hard to believe for a guy like me, but I get it. I guess many of the Oriole players were not alive in 1991. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Where does this game rank in other great games that we've seen in our lifetime? Cody, how do you rank this compared to some of the great games, playoff baseball we've seen in Baltimore?
I'm a horrible person to ask, and maybe this is a unique perspective because I didn't grow up a big baseball fan. I definitely didn't grow up an Orioles fan. So I've only been really a fan of the game for the past 7-8 years. So this to me was my first experience, my first kind of, my team doing something great. I've never seen the Orioles go to the playoffs other than kind of the one play-in game. But this was at the top. This was so much fun to watch. That last 9th inning. It felt to me like a playoff game. I've never seen the Orioles in a playoff game, so this was it. This is the peak.
Gotcha. For me, the takeaway, what I lost a little of this game was that it was in Seattle and not a game that we could have attended. If this was a game 2 years ago with a packed Camden Yards, now for one, it's May, so Camden Yards would not have been packed, but still a nice fan base. It would have ranked a lot higher. If I was there, it might have jumped up near the top. Andrew, how about you?
I mean, it's interesting. If you're talking about games, like the quality of the game or how well the game went for the Orioles, this one really does stand out. I think everyone would remember the game, the playoff game against Detroit where Delon Young hit the bases clearing double that obviously stands out. But that's obviously a playoff game. There's a lot more significance than a Wednesday afternoon in May to a game in October. You could go back and talk about memorable games, maybe not great games, but like if you're talking about memorable games, it was memorable the game that Cal Ripken reach 21-31, especially because he homered during the game, and all eyes were, all eyes not only of the country but of much of the world were on Baltimore that night, which was a really big deal. There are other moments and there are other games that are memorable. You think back to the Sunday in Boston where Chris Davis pitched that went to extra innings. That was a memorable game. There was another game in Seattle a couple of years back that went until almost 5 a.m. because it was an extra inning game on the West Coast. Right. That it seemed like all of Baltimore was awake for, despite the fact that it was, in the middle of the night into the early morning hours that game was going on. That was a memorable game. But just from the sense that it was a memorable game, it wasn't a great game like this was from John Means.
Yeah, and the other game I'd throw out there would be I think it was 2012 Cal Ripken statue unveiling game against the New York Yankees, because that was kind of a full stadium. The Orioles came back in that game, and it was kind of the game that made us realize, wait, this team is good, and This team has a chance, and this is what it's like to cheer for a winning team. Jimmy, this is the best individual performance we've seen by an Oriole, right?
It's definitely the best individual performance that I've seen. Anything that would have happened before 1981, I can't speak to, but it's definitely the best that I've seen. As far as the game itself, it definitely ranks in their top 5 for me. Without pulling all 5 of them together, I definitely say 21-31. I definitely say Clinchmas. Of course, the Delman double game, and I'm sure there's one that I'm forgetting, so that's why I say top 5. But yeah, I mean, this game just had all the feels, and the game itself was just a fantastic game. What I loved about this game the most, though, was that John Means was on, and not only was he on, but that strike zone was getting squeezed. And maybe it was getting squeezed both ways, but that strike zone was getting squeezed, and Means just found a way to get it done. And I mentioned this last night when we recorded for Bleacher Birds, that just, we'll keep this PC, the moxie of John Means to go ahead and throw the breaking balls and the curve balls that he threw on a 3-2 count. It took a lot, and it was amazing to watch him. So definitely top 5.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about this team as a whole this year, because you can go the negative side of the Orioles are in last place of the AL East, but I'm going to lean more towards on the positive side that they are 15-16, 1 game away from 500, 3.5 games back in the AL East. Not that really matters in May. And they went through a schedule in April that was one of the toughest schedules in baseball. So, Andrew, what's your big picture takeaway of this team after 31 games?
I mean, honestly, big picture right now, it's just enjoy it while it lasts. I mean, I know that sounds kind of negative on the surface, but in a baseball season, we've been at this for a little over a month now. You have to take moments like the John Means no-hitter, or like the Anthony Santander throwing a guy out at the plate to end a game in New York. You have to take those kinds of moments throughout a season and let them sustain you, because you don't know when when it's going to fall off the table, when the bottom will fall out from this team that everyone obviously expects to lose 100 games and things to go so poorly. So I'm taking the positivity that you're talking about of a team that is 1 game under 500 and playing above its head for right now, and embracing those moments and trying to enjoy them. And it's also it's moments like the John Means no-hitter that will sustain us when, and I'll say if, in August and September things are really looking underwater and things are really difficult, but we still have things to look forward to on the horizon, like minor league players doing well, and maybe some prospects being called up and performing well. We'll also still have those moments that I mentioned to kind of sustain us going forward.
Right. Sure. Jimmy, is that kind of your takeaway too, that these moments are good enough, and then we'll just see what else happens this year?
Yeah, I mean, this year it's all about just seeing how the young guys develop. Wins and losses don't matter. Individual performances, probably the exception being kind of what we saw yesterday. But just seeing these guys develop and seeing each individual go ahead and develop more so than the team. And, I got to mention it now because I'm worried that I won't mention it later. Say, Adley's got a home run already, and Gunnar Henderson has 2 home runs already. So you want to talk? Andrew wants to talk about minor league baseball being fun. As soon as we get done with this, I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to that minor league baseball program so that I can go ahead and watch those games.
Yeah, MILB.TV. It's $40 for the year, and you can stream all the games on your computer or your phone. So not a bad package. Cody, yesterday, before it became the John Means show, and preparing for Birdland tonight, I was going to focus on the run differential because that always seems to be something that struggles with the Orioles, and it shows like just these blowout losses that we're adding up. So the Orioles currently are a -6 run differential. But when I was looking this afternoon at other teams, the Detroit Tigers are -68 in run differential. And the Detroit Tigers are supposed to be ahead of the Orioles in the rebuild. So what's your takeaway with this team? I mean, who are you comfortable with this team, and who's a placeholder?
Well, I think there's several guys in the rotation and the bullpen that are long-term guys. I think that there's a chance that most of the outfield are long-term guys. First base is covered, so we know that second base is a problem. We've talked about that. We know that Freddie Galvis and Michael Franco are mercenaries. We're probably gonna try to sell them at the trade deadline. But I don't think that I think that makes us just like every Major League Baseball team. The big difference is that we didn't go out and spend a lot of money on these mercenary type players. I have a different view. And maybe it's just riding high off of yesterday and John Means, but I think that we're close enough. I think that we can start talking about the rebuild is over, and we're ready to compete. When you look at the run differential, I just kind of did some quick math. It looks like we're only averaging, as far as runs scored against us, just barely over 4 runs. That's competitive. If you're only giving up 4 runs a game, now again, I think that we're averaging probably about 5, but we're in it. It's close, and we've seen that because we've lost a lot of 1 and 2 game, one run and 2 run games. But we've won a lot of those as well, something that we didn't see the team do in 2018, 2019.
Sure. And I guess that's kind of where I kind of want to steer this is when we're seeing young guys like Austin Hayes and Cedric Mullins kind of set we might get 21-31 Utah Street for a long time if we're lucky with those 2 guys out there. And we've got guys like Ryan Mountcastle coming along. And we've got a pitching staff of John Means, Matt Harvey, who's not part of the future here, Zimmerman with a question mark, Kramer, which has moments to get excited about, and Lopez that we're not real sure about. Is this the start of the upswing of the rebuild? Andrew, how do you see this in general? Is this a fluke, or is this the start to get excited for the rebuild?
I think it's been a month, and this team is playing okay. It's playing better than it was expected to. I think saying that the rebuild is over is a little premature. I still think that this team is a couple of years away from being a consistent contender. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't pop up and, especially with expanded playoffs and 5 team and 2 wild card spots and those kinds of things that we've seen. It doesn't mean that they couldn't pop up and challenge for something like that in what would be a big surprise still. But I still think that they are at least 2 years away from being in any kind of position to be consistently a competitive team, and probably even maybe 3 or 4 years away from challenging to actually do something once they take that kind of mantra of being just a club that is expected to be competitive.
Sure. Jimmy, if Dan Duquette was still our GM, we know how Dan Duquette would manage this situation. He would go out and put all your fires into this season because you got to strike while the iron's hot. We don't get the inclination from Mike Elias that he's that type of guy, that he's a wait type of guy. Are you concerned that as fans we get sucked into this team, and in a month, John Means will be traded and Trey Mancini will be traded, and we're gonna hit that 105 losses?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me if I'm worried about whether or not those two are traded, no, I'm not worried about those two being traded because I don't think it's going to happen. I think Trey's going to go ahead and get an extension at some point in time this year. Whether or not that's a smart move to make or not, I think that's going to happen. And we've still got John Means for 3 years, so it's not necessarily like we're going to go ahead and trade him away for for nothing or even for prospects with 3 years of control left. We're supposed to be contenders in what's our date? 2023 is what we keep on saying.
Well, that's
So
my
why
date.
are we
Major
going-
League Baseball is saying 2027. There's a big difference between what I think and what Major League Baseball thinks.
Yeah, well, nobody expected the Orioles to go ahead and make the playoffs when they did, a few years back either.
Right.
So nobody was calling for that, and all of a sudden we appeared. So I'm with you. Say I think 2023. I don't think either one of them are going anywhere soon. Will it tug at the Oriole fans' heartstrings if it happens? Absolutely. I think Trey would just be a absolute, just gut shot for Baltimore, and you might see some upset people after that.
You see upset people no matter what. You'll have upset people if you don't trade a guy playing well. Cody, I'm going to skip you on this one and go to Andrew because you weren't a big Orioles fan at the time. But Andrew, thinking back to that 2012 season where the Orioles came out of nowhere and suddenly were a good team, do you think the Orioles screwed up by deciding to go for it all then instead of letting prospects grow into what they could be, that they traded stuff away in order to try to win now mentality?
No, because at the time they didn't really have any prospects like they do now. The farm system was kind of barren at the time, and when they popped up in 2012 and made the wild card game, they were actually able to sustain that for 4 or 5 years beyond that and still be a competitive team. Heck, at one point they were the winningest team in the American League, despite the fact that they were making the playoffs kind of every other year during that span. So no, they where they made the mistake through that run was not re-signing Manny Machado, and letting his contract wind down, and then ending up trading him in the final year of his contract. That's where they made the big mistake, and then other ones, which include Chris Davis and that deal and things surrounding it. But no, they didn't really have the prospects. That was more of a hodgepodge that was put together by Dan Duquette and by Andy McPhail prior to him, of a team. And this is more building it in what we think is the right way, building up the farm system, letting these guys come through, develop, and eventually get to the major leagues to sustain something for even longer time, hopefully, than 4 or 5 years.
Sure. Cody, where's Chris Davis? You're his number one fan.
I think he might be here in Texas. I could have sworn I saw him when I was grocery shopping last week at Tom Thumb, and he looked really good. So I am.
Wait, is
hoping...
this serious? You really think you saw him? Okay,
I was just
you had me for a second.
It was hard to tell with the mask.
I don't know. The whole thing is upsetting to me. I don't know what's going on there. Are we going to see him again?
I don't think so. And you know what? It doesn't at this point. It doesn't even matter because I like that Andrew bought into you checking out Chris Davis' new shopping cart stance. So, all right. Final question about this team is: a month in, we're on pace that for this All-Star game in Colorado, we're going to have legit All-Stars, not just Ty Wigginton. And guys that are gifted there because every team's supposed to be represented. Jimmy, who's your all-stars?
Right now it's got to be John Means and Cedric Mullins. I want to say Austin Hayes, but it seems that there's so many outfielders out there that they always get overlooked.
Yeah.
I think it's going to have to take Hayes getting a hot streak, but even if he does, I think he's going to be the one that gets overlooked, that deserves it but doesn't go.
All right, Cody.
How incredible would it be if Cesar Valdez and the Dead Fish were voted onto the All-Star team? I mean, let's look at his performance. I mean, I get that other teams think it's funny, but those other teams can't hit him. Does anybody think that he has a shot
No.
at an All-Star invite?
No.
None at all?
No.
That's so disappointing.
During All-Star games, starters go into the bullpen.
Can we start a campaign, an online campaign early to get Valdez into the All-Star game?
The only way that Valdez would have a chance is if the Orioles didn't have another candidate and they just needed a representative.
Right. Now,
but fortunately for the Orioles, they have 2, maybe 3 other candidates. I'll tell you, I think the other name that has been mentioned for the All-Star game, and this is purely on feels and hopefully a player vote, would be Trey Mancini.
Yeah.
Now he would have to pick it up a little bit with the bat, but it would be cool to see. It would be really cool to see if Cedric Mullins continues the bat, if John Means obviously continues what he's doing. It would be cool to see Means, Mullins, and Mancini all go to the All-Star game as representatives.
I think Mancini goes no matter what he does on the field. I think that becomes a player vote for the Fields to get him in there. Just like him being declared comeback player of the year before spring training even starts. I mean, that story is well larger than Baltimore.
Yep.
And you see him every time they visit a new city or play a new team, he's getting hugs at first base and hugs at the plate. That he's going to be in the All-Star game. As if he doesn't earn it, the fan vote, he'll be there with the player vote, I think.
Agreed.
So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me. I think this is a good update for where the Orioles are right now. It's been a fun month. Let's hope it continues. We've got Birdland Tonight starting up again Friday and stuff. We got a lot more Birdland Tonight on your way. But we want to close it out with, just before the show, I got to sit down and talk with Jeff Arnold, I've known Jeff for many years because he was the Frederick Keys broadcaster for years and did PR over at the Frederick Keys. So well known. Saw these guys, a lot of these Orioles as they were young players going through single A ball, and just in a really cool position to get to call the game yesterday. So I want to go and welcome Jeff Arnold as our first guest for Birdland Tonight. All right, lots of people are talking about John Means waiting his whole life to throw that no-hitter that we all got so excited about. But we want to go a different angle and talk to the broadcaster who waited his whole life to get to call a game like that. Jeff, how are you doing?
You know what? I'm doing well, Josh. It was quite a day and an impressive day. I think made even more so by the fact that, we all know John Means' story, and it's a really cool one, a guy that, was drafted in a round that doesn't exist anymore, had to change high schools to make a varsity team, went to junior college, went to West Virginia, not a guy that was on any top prospects list when he was coming up, and just kind of worked his butt off and eventually got a chance, and he's made the most of his opportunity, and now he's one of the best pitchers in the American League. I mean, that's as good of a story, and makes, I think, yesterday even more special than what it was.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, the story was this pitcher who was contemplating leaving baseball during the offseason and makes the All-Star game. Now he's one of the top pitchers in baseball at the moment. So, yeah, the John Means story is an amazing story. But I want to talk about your story because you've been working this angle, working your way up through. If people don't know and they're just new to you on the radio, you started with the Orioles radio network last year. Tough year to start, but you went through calling games for the Keys. I think the first time we met was you working for the Keys and doing like a media softball game calling and stuff. Mm-hmm. So at some point, you've envisioned yourself one day calling a no-hitter, right?
I mean, it's one of those situations where I had looked, and hoped I was going to get a chance to be in the major leagues at some point. You just never know if you're going to get a chance.
Right.
So I think to be honest with you, most of what I was thinking was, it'd be nice to get to the major leagues. And then I didn't really think about anything after that. I never thought about, well, what would it be like to call a no-hitter in the major leagues? What would it be like to call a game on television in the major leagues, which I got to do last year, and I'm going to get to do some again this year, which is really cool. It's cool to know whose seat you're sitting in that used to be with the team. Number of whom are in the Hall of Fame, and a couple of whom will probably be in the Hall of Fame at some point. So you think about it, and you're just like, man, this is really cool. I'm just really fortunate to be here. And to be honest with you, it was just me thinking more or less about trying to get there, as opposed to what am I going to do when I get there. It's just getting there. That was what I think a lot of it was about. I had called a no-hitter in the minor leagues, but that was in Lynchburg, Virginia, in front of like 15 people. It was like the second game of a doubleheader, and it was a made-up game after a rainout the night before, and it was really cool. There was really nobody there, but you saw what was going on, and you brought your own energy, and that made it cool. But it's a very different thing when the no-hitter you're calling is arguably the best pitched game in Orioles history. It was almost a perfect game. Retired all 27 that he faced. So it's definitely a little bit different when you're in the spot that I was in yesterday. But it was cool, and I'm excited that it happened.
Yeah, I didn't hear that replay of the minor league no-hitter on Baseball Tonight and Sports Center and everywhere else. I think you got a little bit more attention for your call for this game. Last year and this year, you've been in a weird space with calling games because you're not traveling with the team. This was a road game on the West Coast. What's your setup like at the stadium that you're for broadcasting? You're just watching the television and broadcasting from that, right?
Well, we've got a program feed, so it's what you would see at home, and then I've got a bank of monitors that you wouldn't see, and that's like a separate screen with. It kind of depends on where we go. Like, it's not uniform. Like in the NFL, what their radio broadcasters had when they didn't travel, it was uniform for them. For Major League Baseball, it's not uniform. So, for instance, we might go to one place and have like 11 different camera angles. Like that's what we had when we were in Texas. And then Seattle did a really good job, actually. Their production team did a nice job. And we had maybe, our typical looks. We had the all nine. We had all kinds of different, angles. And then there'll be some places where they'll do a really good job of producing the shows. Like we've been pretty fortunate. The last two series I've done, were the Marlins and the Mariners, and they both did really good jobs with their shows. So they handled it really well, and the effects were good, and the looks were good, and all the monitors, it was well done. Their crews did good jobs. But you're going to go some places where they're not going to be so good, and there are going to be hiccups and problems. There was one place we went this year where there was one situation where there was a problem, and I was just like, uh-oh, and we realized it was a problem when the game started. So that was a little bit of navigation that I wasn't expecting to have to do.
Sure.
And that's just what doing monitor baseball is. No matter how many games that you do off of a monitor, and no matter how good the technology gets, it will never, ever, ever beat being there. It will never, ever, ever beat being there. The technology can get as good as it wants to get. It won't make a difference.
Of course.
But the good news yesterday is that the Seattle crew did a really good job. Our in-house massing crew cutting the world feed, which is a very hard thing to do as well, did a really nice job. And fortunately, it was a lot of clean plays. And it was also nice when he strikes out 12 guys.
Yeah,
so
the camera's always there for those. Sure.
Yeah. So you were really fortunate that it was a pretty clean game.
Yeah, I envision it that you're basically like you are as a little kid when you turn the volume down on the TV and you're pretending that you call the games and broadcast the games. That's how I envision broadcasts going this year. How do you keep your energy up? Because it's a no-hitter. If the stadium was packed with a crowd, the crowd was going to be going crazy, and you really seem to bring that energy into your call last night.
I appreciate you saying that. And the way that I do it is we get effects, and so we're hearing all the TV effects and everything. So we get good audio in that standpoint. We have a really good producer engineer, Kevin Reed. Big Daddy does a great job of getting it all set up for us and making sure it sounds good and that we can hear what we need to hear to bring the energy in the right spot. The other thing I do, and this is a little inside broadcasting a little bit, is I actually have him turn my headset set volume down. And so that forces me to get over top of the TV effects and bring a little bit more energy. I do the same thing when we do home games. I don't get a whole lot of audio in my ears because I want to make sure that I'm bringing enough energy where I'm not getting under the crowd noise, because then you just kind of mix in and it doesn't sound good and it doesn't pop as much. But what I do is just, number one, yesterday was easy because this is one of the best pitch games in Orioles history. And we had a sense in about the fourth inning that something cool might happen.
Yeah,
we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but we had a sense that something cool might happen.
And that was my question for you, was when you knew, because your tone changed around then. And you could pick up on the broadcast that, wait, I was driving in the car and I was like, something's different about this game.
It is, and I felt like around the fourth inning we knew something cool might happen, and then it started to build, and then Mullins had that sliding catch, and then Brett has the seventh inning, and then I go on in the eighth, and I was really happy with I went back and listened earlier. I felt good about how the eighth inning went, because there was that ball hit by Lewis, which felt like it would have been out of Camden Yards, and it was a do or die moment. You have at least one of them when you're going to have a no hitter or a perfect game, or sometimes multiple moments. And he made the catch, and so I just tried to gradually build it up to the point where, you're on the edge of your seats, and then we get to the ninth inning, and you're hopeful it's going to be clean, and, we had the moment that we were hoping for at the very end.
Yeah, and I loved your call at the end of the eighth inning saying, post on Twitter, call your friends, go to Instagram, because that's what we were all doing. But
exactly.
But my text messages that went out at that moment were really just some eyeballs and some emojis, and not saying there's a no-hitter going on. Because there's so many superstitions with fans. You rolled straight into it. Call everyone and tell them there's a no-hitter about to happen. So I'm guessing you weren't too worried about any superstitions at that point.
Josh, let me put it to you this way. If I had the ability to alter a no-hitter, do you think that I would probably use my powers on that? I would probably use my powers to get myself $1 billion and be on an island somewhere.
Of course.
So I have nothing to, to me, I think the whole no-hitter thing is silly. And I think yesterday was just kind of like proof of that. I think it's kind of silly. Now, if you ask Ben McDonald, it's a little different. He's been a player. He's been in the dugout when those things are going on. He was there for the combined one in 91.
Yeah.
But for me, you got to tell people, because so much of doing broadcasting, and especially in radio, is building urgency. So why are we watching this or listening to this? And you want to make sure you're giving people a reason as to this is why you should stay, and this is why you should be tuning in. And it's really important to build that. And you can do it with the tone of your voice, but when it comes to something like a no-hitter, you want to make sure you're hitting it. Because I'll tell you the story. I was talking to Dave Sims, who does the Mariners, and this randomly came up when we were talking on Monday. And he told me the story of how Tim McCarver called him. And Dave Sims has called a no-hitter in a perfect game. He called the last perfect game, actually, which was by Felix Hernandez in 12, I think. So McCarver calls in, and he starts going into Dave Sims doing the no-hitter thing and him mentioning a no-hitter. And Dave was just like, oh, man, here we go. Here's another former player that doesn't like this, blah, 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 blah. And McCarver said, I'm glad you told me, because if you didn't tell me, then I wouldn't have tuned the game on when I did, and I wouldn't have stuck around as long as I did. I wanted to see the rest of the game. But if you don't tell people, they're not going to do that. Then they're going to miss it. And it's not the same going back and hearing it after the fact. So you're trying to build urgency. You're trying to bring people into the tent, under the tent, and you're trying to keep them there. And to me, in order to do that, you should just say what's going on. And if you look at what Vin Scully would talk about it, and he's mentioned it before, he's calling it a no-hitter. I've heard other players who are broadcasters call it a no-hitter because it's what their job is and that's what they got to do. And so that's the side that I lean towards. Other people might look at it differently, but I'm just trying to make sure that we keep our audience and are bringing more people in, because everybody should have been there to see what John Means did yesterday.
Of course. And I like that you did that, because even me, as a diehard baseball fan watching every moment of Oriole games, it took me until about the sixth inning to realize what was going on. I just thought it was a great game and things going really well. And then I realized, oh, look at those zeros. So, all right.
Yep.
All right, real quick, thanks for giving me a little bit of time. And real quick before you go, I wanted to know about, did you plan out your call? Because around that seventh, eighth inning, you started to know, oh, I'm going to have to say something at the end of the game.
Absolutely not. I have always gone by the credo that if something big is going to happen, the best reaction that I'm ever going to have is just something that's organic and natural, and I feel it as I'm saying it. And you just pray that you get the right words at the right time, and what people think of the call, that's kind of that's up for them to decide. But for me, I always trust I'm going to have the right words at the right time. I've never done anything written out before. It's what comes out, and I'm glad that I did it that way yesterday. It's the way I'm going to keep doing it. And you just pray that you get the right words at the right time, and that'll produce hopefully the goosebump moments and the moments that you don't forget. And I certainly never forget yesterday.
Of course not. All right, Jeff. Well, congratulations on the great call yesterday. You really embodied the Oriole fans and what we were all feeling for a game that was just such a surprise coming in as a day game, getaway game. So I love that your call, love that it was really what the fans felt. Everyone knows who you are. Everyone listens to Jeff Arnold on the Orioles Radio Network. Follow Jeff at Jeff on the Air over on Twitter. And Jeff, you're great. Thanks for all the support you've done for Section 336 and everything over the years.
You got it, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, that was the great Jeff Arnold from the Orioles Radio Network. Really appreciate us giving him some time, giving us some of his time. There's the right words, because you know how it goes. His call has been on Sports Center and the Baseball Tonight podcast. It's been everywhere, which means he has also been all over the place today doing some interviews. So make sure you're following Jeff on Twitter, Jeff on the Air, and stay tuned to Birdland Tonight. Follow at Birdland Sports on all your social media and subscribe to the Birdland Tonight podcast. Give it 5 stars. Write a review over in Apple Podcasts. That helps people find the show. It helps Birdland Tonight jump up so that when people search Orioles, they find Birdland Tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow night after the Friday night Orioles game as they come back home for the weekend. See you then.